Hi guys and welcome back to Readerandthewrite. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to be showing you all the books that I read in January. This feels kind of strange, but I'm glad to be back, but I will just apologise if I'm a little bit rusty. I haven't done this for like 2 years. I have 7 books to show you today. The first book is actually one that I didn't finish, or at least I've just put down for the next few months. I might come back to it when I feel like it. That's one that I'm going to start with. So the first book is Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. I picked this up in Foyles on the South Bank in London, and it was just on the recommended section. I didn't really look too much into it. I think if I'd have known that it was, well, what I assume is YA, I may not have gone for it. Essentially, this is the story of Pablo and Lena Smart, who is a very famous, globally famous musician, and it's essentially a love story. Pablo works in a convenience store and Lena appears and he kind of falls in love with her without realising that she's famous. I kind of left it about 100 pages in where they're just going on her private jet. It's very well written, it's very engaging and very easy to read, but I just don't think this kind of thing is for me anymore, or at least not at the moment, especially after a couple of the books that I'd read previously that I'd really enjoyed. This just wasn't quite hitting it for me. Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys have read this one or seen anything about it, let me know. But yeah, for now this is a DNF, unfortunately. The first book that I read this year, technically I started it around Christmas time, which was actually a perfect time to read this book. But this one is Invisible in a Bright Light by Sally Gardner. Originally I picked this up in Bath in Mr. B's bookshop. Primarily I liked the cover, I think it's absolutely stunning, and the lovely bookseller recommended this to me. I really enjoyed this. It's quite difficult to explain, and for a children's book it's not the kind of simplest story to follow. Essentially it is very much magical realism. It's set in the fictional city of C, which is supposed to be like a polar to Copenhagen. But there is a shipwreck involved, and essentially Celeste has to try and bring everybody back from the ship, and that is done in a very unusual way and quite convoluted way, to be honest. Apologies for the very sudden lighting change. We are in the middle of a thunderstorm, so I'm using a little bit of artificial lighting. I apologise if it looks a little bit strange, but we're going to carry on. The storm isn't going to stop me. So, as I was saying, if you're interested in things like His Dark Materials, anything that is fantastical or mystical or magical realism, or if you're in the mood to read a really beautiful children's book, I definitely recommend this one. It's really, really lovely. The next book that I read in January was Period by Emma Barnett. This was actually a Christmas present from my boyfriend. I'd mentioned a couple of times that I was really interested in picking this up, and it was ace. It definitely lived up to my expectations. So, a little bit of backstory about me before I necessarily go into the book. My experience with periods and like adolescence was very sheltered. I wasn't really told what they were. I kind of grew up in a relatively like shameful household in that aspect. I was always made to feel very ashamed and embarrassed. That's not necessarily like home life, but also the school that I went to as well. Books like this instinctively always make me feel a little bit like frightened to like read them in public originally, and I was so determined to like break the stigma and make myself feel more comfortable about something that I should feel comfortable about. This was fantastic. This is a non-fiction book. It covers all different areas of period history. It also deals a lot with things like period poverty and what it's like to have a period when you're trans, and not everybody that has a period is a woman. There's chapters on like period sex. There's also a lot in here about religion and period. Hearing kind of how periods are perceived in different religions was very, very interesting. It's pretty self-explanatory if you're the kind of person that you think would like this, or you just want to get really clued up on periods. I 100% recommend this. Since this, I've never thought about my period in the same way, which is cool. The next book that I read was a TV script, and this was Fleabag, which is the entire scripture. If you don't know what Fleabag is, please go and watch the TV show, but if you love Fleabag and you really enjoyed it and you really like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, although who doesn't, to be honest, definitely get your hands on this because it's really interesting reading it. You can really see Phoebe's perception of language and humour shine in it, and it makes you laugh out loud even though you've probably seen the jokes 100 times before when you've watched the series. Yeah, I absolutely would recommend this. The next book that I read was also a Christmas present, and this is The Lying Room by Nikki French. You may have seen a lot of other booktubers talk about this book. That's where I saw it. I don't read a lot of crime, in all honesty, and I heard the concept of this and I was like, yeah, I need it. This book follows the character of Neve, who is having an affair. She's been with her husband for a long time, and she's actually having an affair with her boss, and she gets a text to go over to his place, and when she gets there she finds that he is dead on the floor, and she kind of has two options. Does she call the police and thus expose her affair and destroy her marriage and her relationship with her children and her friends and her work colleagues, or does she clean up the scene and act like she was never there? And we all know what she's going to go for. If you're a fan of crime, this is like a go-to, you've got to give it a go. But if it's something that you maybe you're thinking about, then I would really give this a go. It's super easy to read, it's really inviting. It's the kind of book that you just sit down on a nice cozy night and you read all in one go. If you guys have any recommendations based off of either Nikki French, maybe I should read some more of their books, or on the premise of this, please let me know, because I really want to read more books like this. I really enjoyed it. I feel like if you've watched any BookTube in the last sort of like 4 or 5 months, you'll have definitely seen this book in people's reviews, and I got it and it lives up to the hype. It is ace. So this is The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary. Again, I don't tend to read books like this. I'm not a massive fan of romantic books at all, but there was something about this that I loved. Again, the premise kind of caught me, and as soon as I got into it I was like, yeah, this book is for me, definitely. This story is set around two characters called Tiffy and Leon. They have a flat share, so essentially Tiffy lives there in the evening times and at weekends, and Leon lives there in the daytimes because he works night shifts at a hospital, and it's the story of their eventual romance. I found the side characters to be just as hilarious. I really hated his girlfriend, and I know that's kind of the point, and I felt kind of bad that I did, but she really annoyed me. I'm sure you've probably read this by now, but if you haven't, believe the hype, this is an ace book. I'd 100% recommend it. This is probably the best book I've read in a couple of years, just to let you know. This is The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenholz. I adored this book. It took me a while to read. It took me a good couple of weeks to read it, and I was kind of constantly reading it just because, not necessarily that it's hard going, but it is definitely like one that you really need to focus on. And I feel like when you have the little like picture bit in the middle, you know you've made it as an adult. This book is The Untold Lives of the 5 women that Jack the Ripper killed, who were called Polly, Anne, Elizabeth, Catherine and Mary Jane. I didn't realise that Catherine actually was from Wolverhampton, which is very close to where I live. I had no idea, so that was really interesting, seeing my kind of neck of the woods in a Victorian perspective. So this doesn't document the murders in any graphic detail. It actually doesn't explain the murders at all. Each individual story kind of ends either with the discovery of the body or kind of the aftermath of that. If you are looking for a book which documents Jack the Ripper, or who they think that might be, or the murders, this is not the book for you. This is a really excellent take on the Jack the Ripper case, because it focuses solely on the women that were killed. I'm so glad books like this exist now, because these women have finally got a voice and we can hear it, and we can hear all about their lives and their hardships. This book made me incredibly sad, I'm not gonna lie. I had a little cry quite a few times. It also is fantastic about breaking the myth that they were all prostitutes and that's the reason that they were killed. It's just something that the media kind of got swept up in at the time and was determined to make it that way, just to kind of show some blame on the girls. Not the case at all, and it does delve into that a little bit as well. It's great. It's a 5-star read. I believe that is everything that I read in the month of January. Please let me know if you do have any recommendations based on anything I've said, or if you have any more questions for me, pop them down below and I will be happy to answer them. Sorry this video is a little bit late, but I'm just super excited to be back. So yeah, I shall see you guys soon. Bye. Woo! I did it. I did it.